The diplomatic meeting on Kepler 442b was supposed to be routine. Ambassador Chen had assured everyone that the Zephyrian Empire wanted to discuss trade agreements, nothing more. The conference hall gleamed with alien architecture, its crystalline walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt human eyes if stared at too long. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez stood at attention near the back wall, his combat uniform crisp despite the 3-day journey through hyperspace. The Marine Corps had assigned him as security detail, though everyone expected this to be the most boring assignment of his career. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders, their elongated blue forms moving with an almost ethereal grace. Chen droned on about shipping routes and mineral rights, while Rodriguez watched the alien delegates with professional interest. Their leader, General Vextar, towered nearly 9 feet tall, his skin shimmering like polished sapphire. Forearms moved in flowing gestures as he spoke, his voice creating harmonics that seemed to resonate in the very air. The Terran colonies in the outer rim produce excellent titanium, Chen was saying, consulting his tablet. We believe a partnership would benefit both our civilizations greatly. Rodriguez noticed something odd in Vextar's posture. The general's secondary arms kept twitching, and his large black eyes darted toward the human security detail more often than seemed natural for a peaceful negotiation. The Marines' instincts, honed through 3 tours in the Martian Rebellion and 2 campaigns against the Centauri pirates, began to whisper warnings. Behind Vextar, 6 more Zephyrians sat in perfect stillness, too perfect. Rodriguez had studied enough alien cultures to know that most species had unconscious movements, fidgets, or habits. These beings looked like statues, their breathing so controlled it seemed mechanical. The negotiation continued for 2 hours. Chen seemed pleased with the progress, shaking hands with Vexitar using the ceremonial 3-grip method that human diplomats had learned from the Altarian Codex. Rodriguez remained motionless, but his eyes tracked every movement in the room. It was during the break that everything changed. Chen stepped away to consult with his team, leaving Rodriguez standing near the refreshment area. The gravity on Kepler 442b was lighter than Earth's, making every movement feel slightly floaty, slightly wrong. General Vextar approached the human security station with what appeared to be casual interest. His forearms swayed as he walked, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm. When he reached Rodriguez, the general stopped and tilted his elongated head with what might have been curiosity. "You are very small for a warrior," Vextar said, his voice carrying undertones that made the translator struggle with the meaning. "Your species sends children to guard their diplomats?" Rodriguez kept his expression neutral. "I'm Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. I'm here to ensure the safety of the diplomatic mission." Vextar's laugh sounded like crystal chimes in a windstorm. "Marine Corps," he repeated, seeming to taste the words. "We have studied your military organizations. Your people are primitive, crude. You still use chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons." The other Zephyrians had turned to watch the conversation, their black eyes reflecting the room's bioluminescent glow. Rodriguez felt the weight of their attention but maintained his professional composure. "Our equipment serves its purpose," Rodriguez replied carefully, remembering his diplomatic protocol training. "Does it?" Vextar stepped closer, his height casting a long shadow over the human marine. "Your entire species achieved spaceflight only centuries ago. We have been traveling between stars for millennia. Your weapons, your tactics, your understanding of warfare, all of it belongs in a museum." The general raised one of his 4 hands, the gesture seemingly casual. "Perhaps we should demonstrate the difference between a real warrior and a human playing dress-up." Rodriguez saw the movement coming, but protocol demanded he not escalate. The alien's palm struck his face with surprising force, the slap echoing through the crystalline chamber like a gunshot. The impact sent Rodriguez stumbling backward, his cheek burning from what felt like sandpaper dragged across skin. Silence filled the room. Ambassador Chen turned from his consultation, his face going pale as he processed what had just happened. The other human diplomats stared in shock, unsure whether to intervene or flee. General Vextar stood with all 4 arms spread wide, his mouth curving in what might have been a smile. "Fragile," he announced to his companions. "Just as our intelligence reports indicated." Rodriguez straightened slowly, his hand moving to his cheek where purple bruising was already beginning to form. Blood trickled from where the alien's rough skin had scraped him. His brown eyes met Vextar's black ones, and something passed between them that needed no translation. "Staff Sergeant," Chen called out, his voice tight with diplomatic panic. "Please remember the mission parameters." But Rodriguez was no longer thinking about parameters. He was thinking about the weight of the sidearm on his hip, about the combat knife strapped to his thigh, about the emergency beacon that could summon an entire Marine battalion from the orbital station above. Most of all, he was thinking about the look in Vextar's eyes, which held no trace of the peaceful traitor the briefings had described. The general turned away, dismissing the human with a gesture that somehow managed to convey infinite contempt. He spoke to his companions in their musical native language, the words creating harmonies that the universal translator rendered as laughter. Rodriguez touched the emergency communicator on his collar, activating it with a sequence that would alert the ship above to potential danger. The signal would take precious seconds to reach orbit, but he had learned long ago that preparation saved lives. In the silence that followed Vexitar's casual assault, no one in the room understood that they had just witnessed the moment when two civilizations discovered they had very different definitions of strength, honor, and the appropriate response to provocation. The meeting was about to become much more interesting than anyone had planned. The emergency signal reached the USSC Valkyrie in exactly 43 seconds. Captain Sarah Mitchell was reviewing deployment schedules when the red alert klaxon began its urgent wail throughout the ship. Her coffee mug hit the deck as she spun toward the communications station. "Captain, we have a code yellow from the surface," Lieutenant Commander Torres reported, his fingers flying over the holographic display. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez activated his emergency beacon. Mitchell's blood went cold." Code yellow meant potential hostile contact during a diplomatic mission. She had handpicked Rodriguez for this assignment precisely because of his steady temperament and flawless record. If he was calling for backup, something had gone seriously wrong. "Give me a direct line to the surface team," she ordered, dropping into her command chair. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their movements sharp and precise. "No response from Ambassador Chen's communication array," Torres reported after several tense moments. "The beacon signal is automated, but there's no voice communication. Time to orbital bombardment range if needed." 14 minutes, Captain." Mitchell studied the tactical display showing Kepler 442b rotating slowly beneath them. The planet looked peaceful from space, its blue-green surface marbled with white clouds. Intelligence had classified it as a garden world with no military significance. "Perfect for diplomatic meetings, ma'am," Ensign Park called from the sensor station. "I'm detecting energy signatures from the surface that weren't there an hour ago. Multiple sources concentrated around the meeting location. Weapons signatures, unknown type. The readings don't match any known technology in our databases." Mitchell's jaw tightened. The Zephyrian Empire had always claimed to be a peaceful trading civilization. Their ships used minimal shielding and no visible weapons systems. Either Earth's intelligence was completely wrong, or the Zephyrians had been lying for the past 50 years. "Alert all Marine units. I want full combat deployment ready in 10 minutes, she ordered. "And get me Admiral Peterson on subspace. Priority 1. 3 decks below, Master Sergeant Kevin O'Brien was already suiting up when the general alert reached the Marine barracks. 23 years in the Corps had taught him to recognize the sound of real trouble, and the emergency beacon from Rodriguez meant his boys were about to earn their pay. "Listen up," he barked as Marines scrambled to their lockers. "Rodriguez is in trouble planetside. We go in hot, we go in heavy, and we bring our people home. Questions?" Private First Class Williams raised his hand. "Sarge, what about the diplomatic immunity? Won't we cause an interstellar incident?" O'Brien's smile was not pleasant. "Son, someone already caused an incident when they messed with a United States Marine. Our job is to make sure they regret it." The deployment bay filled with the controlled chaos of Marines preparing for combat. Power armor systems hummed to life, weapons were charged and checked, and tactical displays updated with the latest intelligence from the surface. Back on Kepler 442b, the tension in the conference room had grown thick enough to cut. Ambassador Chen was desperately trying to salvage the situation, his diplomatic training warring with his obvious concern for his security officer. "General Vextar," Chen began carefully, "I believe there may have been a cultural misunderstanding. In human society, physical contact of that nature is considered—" "Silence," Vextar interrupted, his voice carrying new harmonics that made the translator work harder. Your subordinate needed correction. Perhaps now we can discuss real business. Rodriguez remained at attention, but his posture had shifted subtly. His weight was balanced on the balls of his feet, his hands positioned for quick movement despite appearing relaxed. The blood had stopped flowing from his cheek, but the bruising was spreading, turning his face into a map of purple and blue. Real business? Chen asked, confused. Vextar gestured with two of his arms, and the conference room's crystalline walls began to shift. What had appeared to be decorative panels slid aside, revealing weapon emplacements that had been hidden from human sensors. The peaceful meeting room transformed into something that looked suspiciously like a command center. The Zephyrian Empire requires Earth's surrender, Vextar announced calmly. Your species has expanded beyond your designated borders. This aggression cannot be tolerated. Chen's mouth fell open. Surrender? What are you talking about? We're here to discuss trade agreements. Trade agreements, Vexatar repeated with that crystalline laugh. Yes, we trade. We trade your freedom for your lives. A generous offer, considering your species' violent nature. Rodriguez's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward his sidearm, but Vextar's primary eyes tracked the motion instantly. The alien's smile became something predatory. Your weapon is primitive chemical propulsion, the general said. Our personal shields can stop any projectile your people can create. Even if you could harm me, there are 40 Zephyrian warships in orbit around your Earth right now. Your colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan are already under our control. The words hit Chen like physical blows. That's impossible. We would have detected. Your detection methods are crude, Vexatar interrupted. Our ships have been in position for 3 months. Your orbital defense platforms were disabled 2 hours ago. Your fleet is scattered across a dozen systems, chasing threats that we manufactured to divide your forces. Rodriguez felt something cold settle in his chest. The Zephyrians had planned this perfectly, waited for the right moment when Earth's defenses were at their weakest. The diplomatic mission hadn't been about trade at all. It had been about delivering an ultimatum to a species that couldn't refuse. What do you want? Chen whispered. Complete capitulation. Your military forces will stand down. Your governments will transfer authority to Zephyrian administrators. Your people will be relocated to designated reservation worlds where they can live in peace under our guidance. Vexatar's 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of false generosity. We are not monsters. Your species will survive. You will simply serve. The conference room fell silent except for the humming of alien technology. Chen's face had gone gray with shock, and the other human diplomats huddled together like frightened children. Rodriguez checked his chronometer. The emergency signal had been active for over 3 minutes now. If Captain Mitchell was following standard protocol, Marine reinforcements were already preparing for deployment. The question was whether they would arrive before Vextar decided that diplomatic niceties were no longer necessary. You have 1 hour to contact your leadership, the general continued. If Earth does not begin the surrender process by then, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. Perhaps we'll start with your lunar colonies. A clean disintegration should make our point effectively. Rodriguez looked up at the crystalline ceiling, knowing that somewhere above, the Marines were coming. The Zephyrians might have superior technology, but they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated what humans would do when their backs were against the wall. The next 57 minutes were going to be very interesting. Captain Mitchell's face appeared on Admiral Peterson's secure communication channel exactly 6 minutes after the emergency beacon activation. The Admiral's weathered features immediately told her everything she needed to know about the situation. Sarah, we've got problems, Peterson said without preamble. Long-range sensors just picked up massive energy signatures throughout the Sol system. Unknown vessels are powering up weapon systems near Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. Mitchell felt her stomach drop. Admiral, my Marine on the surface just activated an emergency beacon during what was supposed to be a peaceful diplomatic meeting. It's a trap. Has to be. Peterson's expression was grim. We've got reports coming in from across the fleet. Our ships are scattered, chasing what we thought were pirate raids and distress calls. Someone's been playing us for months. Orders, sir? Get your people off that planet and prepare for combat operations. I'm recalling every ship I can reach, but it's gonna take time. Peterson paused, and Mitchell could see him age a decade in those few seconds. Sarah, if what our sensors are telling us is true, we're looking at a full-scale invasion. Earth's orbital defenses went dark 20 minutes ago. The connection ended, leaving Mitchell staring at a blank screen. She turned to her bridge crew, all of whom had heard enough to understand the gravity of their situation. The Valkyrie was a single destroyer facing an enemy that had just revealed they had been planning this attack for months. "Ma'am," Torres called out, "the Marine deployment shuttles are ready to launch. Send them down." "All of them." Mitchell's voice was steady despite the chaos in her mind. "And prepare the ship for combat. If those alien bastards want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." On the surface, Rodriguez had been counting seconds since the ultimatum. 48 minutes remained until Vextar's deadline, and the alien general seemed content to wait. The Zephyrians had positioned themselves strategically around the room, their movements coordinated with military precision that belied their claims of being peaceful traders. Ambassador Chen had been frantically trying to establish communication with Earth, but the Zephyrian jamming technology was blocking all outgoing signals. The diplomat's face glistened with sweat despite the comfortable temperature in the conference room. "This is insane," Chen muttered, his hands shaking as he worked his communication tablet. 50 years of peaceful contact and now this. 50 years of reconnaissance, Vextar corrected pleasantly. "We needed time to study your species, understand your capabilities, map your territories. Your people are remarkably trusting. You invited us to visit your worlds, tour your facilities, observe your military exercises. We learned everything we needed to know about human weakness." Rodriguez filed that information away while maintaining his stoic expression. The Zephyrians had been playing a very long game, using Earth's own openness and desire for peaceful contact against them. It was a level of strategic thinking that would have impressed him if it hadn't been aimed at his own species. "But why?" Chen asked desperately. "What could you possibly gain from conquering humanity? We're a young species. We have nothing you couldn't simply ask for." Vextar's forearms moved in what might have been a shrug. "Resources are finite. Territory is limited. Your species breeds rapidly and expands aggressively. In another century, you would be a threat to our empire. Better to solve the problem now while the solution is still relatively simple." "Simple?" Rodriguez spoke for the first time since being struck, his voice calm and even. "You think conquering humanity will be simple?" The general turned those black eyes toward the Marine, and this time Rodriguez saw something new in them. Not contempt exactly, but curiosity, as if Vextar had detected something in the human's tone that warranted attention. "Your species has no orbital defenses remaining. Your fleet is scattered. Your governments will fall within hours once we begin the demonstration phase." Vextar tilted his elongated head. "Yes, Marine Rodriguez, simple." Rodriguez nodded slowly as if accepting the logic. "You might be right. Humans don't have the same technology as the Zephyrian Empire. We don't have energy shields or gravitic weapons or ships that can hide from our sensors." "Precisely. Your weapons are chemical propulsion. Your armor is metal and ceramic. Your tactics are derived from ground warfare on a single planet. Primitive." "Primitive," Rodriguez agreed. "We still use gunpowder and steel. We still fight with tactics developed in places like Fallujah and Kandahar and the mountains of Afghanistan." His voice remained conversational, almost friendly. "We're not an advanced species like the Zephyrians." Chen was staring at his security officer as if Rodriguez had lost his mind. The other human diplomats looked confused by the Marines' apparent acceptance of their hopeless situation. But Vextar was listening intently now, his forearms still as he focused on the human warrior. "The thing about primitive tactics," Rodriguez continued, his hand moving casually toward his equipment belt, "is that they've been tested in the worst possible conditions. Natural selection, you might call it. The tactics that don't work get you killed, so they disappear. Only the effective ones survive." His fingers found the small device he was looking for, a piece of equipment that the Zephyrian sensors had dismissed as a simple medical monitor. Rodriguez had never been more grateful for the Corps' insistence on carrying backup systems for everything. "For example," he said, activating the device with a subtle movement, "chemical propulsion weapons are primitive, but they work in any environment, require minimal maintenance, and the projectiles travel fast enough that even enhanced reflexes have trouble tracking them." The device in his hand was a localized EMP generator, designed to disable enemy electronics at close range. It was a last resort weapon, barely larger than a cigarette lighter that would fry any unshielded circuitry within 10 feet. Vextar's enhanced hearing caught the soft click of the device activating. The general's black eyes widened as he began to understand what the human was suggesting. "The other thing about primitive tactics," Rodriguez said, his voice still calm as he stepped closer to the alien, "is that they're unpredictable to an enemy who thinks they understand everything." The EMP pulse erupted from the device with no visible effect. But Rodriguez saw the immediate result in Vextar's expression. The alien's personal shield generator, integrated into his elegant clothing, simply stopped working. The energy readings that had made the general confident in his invulnerability disappeared in an instant. "You see, General," Rodriguez said, drawing his sidearm with practiced speed, "humans might not have gravity shields or plasma weapons, but we understand that the most advanced technology in the universe is still vulnerable to a really old-fashioned approach." The first gunshot echoed through the crystalline chamber like thunder, followed immediately by 5 more in rapid succession. Rodriguez put 2 rounds center mass into Vextar, then transitioned to the other Zephyrians in the room with the mechanical precision that had made him one of the Corps' best marksmen. Without their personal shields, the aliens discovered that their advanced physiology was no match for accelerated lead traveling at 1,200 feet per second. The conference room fell silent, except for the ringing echoes of gunfire. Ambassador Chen stared in shock at the bodies of 7 Zephyrian diplomats scattered across the floor. Rodriguez reloaded his weapon and activated his emergency communicator. "Valkyrie, this is Rodriguez. The negotiation is over. Recommend immediate combat deployment." Outside, the first of the Marine drop shuttles were already screaming through Kepler 442b's atmosphere, and the real war was about to begin. The first Marine drop shuttle hit Kepler 442b's surface 18 minutes after Rodriguez eliminated the Zephyrian delegation. Master Sergeant O'Brien emerged from the craft with 40 Marines in full combat gear, their power armor systems displaying tactical information that painted a very concerning picture. "Sarge, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the city center," Corporal Martinez reported, his voice crackling through the squad communication system. Whatever the aliens were hiding, they're not hiding it anymore. O'Brien's helmet display showed the conference center 2 kilometers away, surrounded by what appeared to be Zephyrian military installations that hadn't existed an hour ago. Holographic camouflage fields were dropping across the city, revealing weapon emplacements and troop concentrations that intelligence had completely missed. "They've been planning this for months," he growled, checking his rifle's ammunition display. "Martinez, take 3rd Squad and secure the landing zone. Williams, 2nd Squad on overwatch. 1st Squad, we're going to get our boy Rodriguez." The Marines moved with practiced efficiency through what had appeared to be an alien park, but was now revealed as a carefully constructed killing field. Automated defense turrets rose from hidden positions, their energy weapons tracking toward the advancing humans. The first plasma bolt vaporized a tree 10 feet from O'Brien's position, the superheated air creating a shockwave that rattled his armor. The Master Sergeant dove for cover behind what he had thought was a decorative boulder, but turned out to be a reinforced fighting position. "Contact front," he shouted into his communicator. "Enemy defensive positions throughout the area. They've been setting up for this operation for God knows how long." 2 more Marine shuttles landed behind them, disgorging additional squads that immediately began flanking the alien positions. The battle for Kepler 442b had begun in earnest, but O'Brien's primary concern remained reaching Rodriguez before the situation deteriorated further. In orbit above the planet, Captain Mitchell watched the tactical display with growing alarm. Long-range sensors had detected Zephyrian ships decloaking throughout the system, their positions suggesting they had been preparing for this moment for months. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Torres reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel. They're demanding our immediate surrender." "Put it through." The bridge's main screen flickered to life, revealing a Zephyrian who appeared to be of higher rank than the late General Vextar. This one's skin carried intricate patterns of silver and gold, and his forearms moved with ceremonial precision. "I am Admiral Kethavar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," the alien announced. "Your planet Earth has been informed of our terms. You have 37 minutes to order your military forces to stand down, or we will begin the demonstration phase of our operation." Mitchell studied the alien's arrogant expression and made a decision that would echo through galactic history. "This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the United States Space Command ship Valkyrie. I've got a counteroffer for you. Admiral Kethvar's head tilted with what might have been amusement. You are in no position to make offers, human. Your world is defenseless, maybe, Mitchell agreed, but you made one critical mistake in your planning. And what might that be? Mitchell's smile was not pleasant. You assumed we'd fight by your rules. She cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Target their command ship with everything we have. Full spread of kinetic penetrators followed by nuclear torpedoes. Ma'am, their shields won't stop a depleted uranium rod traveling at 6% of light speed. Mitchell interrupted. The aliens have energy shields designed to stop energy weapons. But kinetic weapons? Old-fashioned projectiles. I don't think they've planned for that. The Valkyrie's weapon systems came online with a sound like distant thunder. The ship's kinetic bombardment system, originally designed for planetary siege operations, aligned its magnetic accelerators toward the largest Zephyrian vessel. Firing, the weapons officer announced. 6 depleted uranium rods, each weighing 5 tons and accelerated to relativistic speeds, streaked toward the alien command ship. The Zephyrian's energy shields, magnificent technology capable of deflecting plasma beams and particle weapons, proved completely ineffective against simple mass traveling at enormous velocity. The first rod punched through the alien vessel's hull like a bullet through tissue paper. The second and third followed microseconds later, their kinetic energy converting to heat and shockwave as they encountered the ship's internal structure. The alien command vessel simply came apart, its advanced materials no match for the primitive human understanding of physics. The explosion lit up the space around Kepler 442b like a small star, visible to the Marines fighting on the surface below. Holy shit, Private Williams breathed, watching the fireball expand in the sky above them. The Navy actually got one. O'Brien used the distraction to advance his squad toward the conference center. The Zephyrian ground forces seemed to be receiving conflicting orders, their coordinated defense becoming increasingly chaotic as their command structure was disrupted. Move, 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 he shouted, leading his Marines through the gap in alien defenses. While they're confused, Rodriguez was still in the conference center when the sky lit up, the explosion clearly visible through the crystalline walls. Ambassador Chen and the surviving diplomats huddled near the far wall, traumatized by the sudden transformation of their peaceful mission into open warfare. Rodriguez, Chen whispered. What have you done? The Marine was reloading his weapon and checking his equipment, preparing for whatever came next. My job, sir. I protected the diplomatic mission from hostile action. You killed their negotiating team. No, sir, Rodriguez corrected, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. I killed an invasion forces advance team. There's a difference. The sound of approaching combat reached them from outside, the distinctive crack of human firearms mixed with the hum and sizzle of alien energy weapons. Rodriguez moved to the chamber's entrance, positioning himself to cover the main approaches. Stay down and stay quiet, he ordered the diplomats. The Marines are coming, but we need to hold this position until they arrive. Through his tactical communicator, Rodriguez could hear Master Sergeant O'Brien coordinating the assault on the conference center. The alien defenses were collapsing as their commanders struggled to adapt to human tactics they had never encountered. The problem with studying an enemy for 50 years, Rodriguez muttered to himself as he checked his sight lines, is that you start to think you understand them completely. An explosion rocked the building as O'Brien's demolition team cleared the outer defenses. Rodriguez could hear boots on crystalline floors, the sound of Marines moving with purpose through hostile territory. Rodriguez! O'Brien's voice echoed through the chamber. Sound off. Here, Master Sergeant. Conference room secure. O'Brien appeared in the doorway 3 minutes later, his power armor scarred by plasma burns but his weapons ready. Behind him came 40 Marines who looked like they had fought their way through hell to reach this position. Good to see you, Rodriguez, O'Brien said, surveying the dead aliens scattered across the floor. I take it the negotiations didn't go well? Rodriguez's smile was grim. Let's just say we reached an understanding about human military doctrine. Above them, the sky continued to flicker with explosions as the space battle raged on. The Zephyrian invasion had begun, but it wasn't proceeding according to their carefully laid plans. Humanity's response to their ultimatum was written in kinetic weapons and Marine Corps tactics that no amount of advanced study could have prepared them for. The aliens were about to learn why. Humans had survived on a planet where everything tried to kill them for millions of years. The destruction of Admiral Kethavar's flagship sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian fleet that had nothing to do with the explosion's physical effects. For the first time in their species' recorded history, the technologically superior Zephyrian Empire had been dealt a devastating blow by a supposedly primitive civilization. Fleet Commander Jeltara, now the senior Zephyrian officer in the system, stared at the expanding debris cloud where the flagship had been. Her tactical displays showed impossible readings. The humans had destroyed a fully shielded battlecruiser using what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles. Analysis, she demanded from her science officer. The human weapons were crude metal projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds, came the bewildered reply. Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons. They have no effect on solid matter traveling at those velocities. Jeltara felt something that her species had not experienced in centuries. Genuine concern about the outcome of a military operation. The humans were not fighting according to any tactical doctrine the Zephyrian military understood. Their weapons were primitive, their ships were slow, but their approach to warfare was proving devastatingly effective. Order all ships to maintain maximum distance from the human vessels, she commanded. We will destroy them with long-range plasma bombardment. But even as she gave the order, Jeltara knew that the invasion plan was already falling apart. The operation had been based on the assumption that humans would recognize Zephyrian technological superiority and surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, they were fighting with a ferocity that suggested they would rather die than submit. On Earth, President Sarah Williams stood in the Situation Room watching displays that showed the reality of humanity's situation. 40 Zephyrian ships had indeed been positioned around Earth for months, their presence hidden by technology that made human sensors useless. Orbital defense platforms that had taken decades to build were nothing but expanding clouds of plasma and metal. Options, she said to the Joint Chiefs assembled around the table. Admiral Chen, no relation to the diplomat now trapped on Kepler 442b, spoke first. We have 18 ships in range of Earth, scattered across 3 task forces. The aliens have 40 vessels, each one roughly equivalent to our dreadnoughts in firepower. Odds. Honestly, if they fight conventionally, we lose. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. General Martinez, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward. But Captain Mitchell just proved they're not invulnerable. Their shields don't stop kinetic weapons. One lucky shot doesn't win a war, Admiral Chen replied grimly. President Williams studied the tactical displays, watching red icons representing Zephyrian ships moving into bombardment positions. In 6 hours, they would be within range to begin the systematic destruction of Earth's major population centers. What would you do, General, if you were facing an enemy with better equipment but the same basic vulnerabilities? Martinez considered the question carefully. I'd use asymmetric tactics. Hit them where they're not expecting it with weapons they haven't planned for. Make them fight our kind of war instead of theirs. Explain. The aliens have been studying us for 50 years, but they've been studying our official military doctrine. Fleet engagements, orbital bombardments, conventional space warfare. Martinez's expression grew thoughtful. But humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by fighting fair. We became dominant by adapting, improvising, and using every dirty trick we could think of. President Williams nodded slowly. What do you need? Every ship, every station, every armed vessel in the system. Military, commercial, civilian. I don't care if it's a cargo hauler with jury-rigged weapons or a mining ship loaded with explosives. We're going to show these aliens what human creativity looks like when we're fighting for survival. The orders went out across the Sol system within minutes, transmitted on emergency channels that reached every human vessel in space. Cargo ships armed themselves with improvised kinetic weapons. Mining vessels loaded their holds with fusion charges. Even passenger liners began converting their engines into makeshift ramming systems. On Kepler 442b, the ground battle was turning into a nightmare for the Zephyrian occupation forces. What should have been a simple securing operation, after the diplomatic team delivered their ultimatum, had become an urban warfare scenario that their tactical databases had no protocols for. Master Sergeant O'Brien led his expanded force through the alien city, with tactics developed in the ruins of Fallujah and the mountains of Afghanistan. The Zephyrians had superior individual weapons and better armor, but they had no experience fighting an enemy that refused to engage in conventional battle. Third Squad, take that building and set up overwatch, O'Brien commanded, watching his Marines move with deadly efficiency. First Squad, I want demolition charges on every support pillar in that alien command center. The Zephyrians tried to respond with their energy weapons and personal shields, but the Marines had adapted their tactics after the first few engagements. EMP grenades disabled the alien shields, while good old-fashioned explosives brought down structures that had been built to withstand plasma weapons but not chemical explosives. Rodriguez found himself fighting alongside Marines he had trained, on 3 different worlds, but this battle felt different. The aliens had started this fight convinced of their superiority. Now they were learning what humans did when someone threatened their home. Sarge, Corporal Martinez called over the squad channel. I've got alien reinforcements moving in from the east. Looks like they're trying to retake the conference center. How many? At least 50, maybe more. They've got some kind of heavy weapon with them. O'Brien studied his tactical display, noting the positions of his scattered squads. The Marines had spread throughout the city, disrupting alien operations and gathering intelligence, but they were outnumbered and far from home. All squads converge on my position, he ordered. We're going to make our stand here. Rodriguez checked his ammunition count and smiled grimly. 43 rounds remaining, plus the charges he had been saving for special occasions. The aliens wanted to retake the conference center where their invasion had begun. They were welcome to try. Through the crystalline walls they could see the alien reinforcements approaching. Tall, graceful beings carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy, moving with the confidence of a species that had never lost a war. They were about to discover why humans had never lost a species. Marines! O'Brien called out as the enemy forces took position around the building. Remember what we fight for. Remember that every second we hold this position is another second for Earth to prepare its defenses. The aliens began their assault, with precision plasma strikes meant to disable the building's structure, but the Marines had spent the last hour preparing surprises that no amount of technological superiority could overcome. When the Zephyrians breached the walls, they found themselves facing warriors who had learned their trade in the harshest environments in the galaxy. The battle for the conference center was about to become a masterclass in human military innovation. The aliens had studied human tactics for 50 years, but they had never experienced the difference between theory and reality when it came to Marines defending their own. The coordinated human response to the Zephyrian invasion began exactly 4 hours after Rodriguez fired the first shots of the war. Across the Sol system, every vessel capable of independent movement received the same message. Converge on Earth. Bring everything that can serve as a weapon. Captain Elena Vasquez of the cargo hauler Iron Mountain was 3 days out from Ceres when the emergency broadcast reached her ship. Her vessel carried mining equipment and industrial supplies, not weapons. But Elena had served 2 tours with the Space Navy before becoming a civilian pilot, and she understood what the orders really meant. Jimmy, she called to her engineer, can you rig the magnetic cranes to launch cargo containers? Chief Engineer James Park looked up from his console with confusion. Sure, but why would you want to do that? Because we're about to turn this hauler into a warship. Across the system, similar conversations were taking place on hundreds of civilian vessels. The Lucky Strike, an asteroid mining ship, began loading its holds with fusion charges normally used for breaking apart asteroids. The passenger liner New Horizons started, converting its engine systems to provide ramming capability that would turn the ship itself into a weapon. Admiral Zheng of the hastily assembled human defense fleet watched the improvised armada gathering around Earth and felt something between pride and terror. Military doctrine said this should be a disaster. Untrained civilians in converted civilian vessels facing a technologically superior enemy should result in a massacre. But humans had never been particularly good at following military doctrine when their survival was at stake. Admiral, Commander Torres reported from the Fleet Coordination Center. We have over 300 vessels responding to the call. Everything from mining ships to luxury yachts. Weapons status? Improvised kinetic launchers, fusion charges, ramming systems, and a few dozen ships that have been fitted with actual military weapons. Torres paused. Sir, the Mining Guild has reported that they're loading cargo containers with depleted uranium and accelerating them using magnetic launch systems, essentially turning their ships into giant railguns. Jung nodded grimly. Time until the alien fleet reaches bombardment range? 2 hours, 17 minutes. The Admiral studied the tactical display showing the approaching Zephyrian ships. 40 vessels in perfect formation, their energy shields glowing like small stars against the darkness of space. They moved with the confidence of a fleet that had never been challenged. That was about to change. On Kepler 442b, the battle for the conference center had become a brutal lesson in the difference between technological superiority and tactical innovation. The Zephyrians had breached the outer walls with their plasma weapons, but found themselves facing a defense that their tactical computers couldn't process. The Marines had turned the conference center into a three-dimensional maze of choke points, kill zones, and booby traps that would have made their ancestors who fought in the tunnels of Vietnam proud. Every corridor contained surprises designed by warriors who understood that superior firepower meant nothing if you couldn't bring it to bear effectively. Corporal Martinez crouched behind an overturned table, watching alien troops advance through what had once been the main hallway. The Zephyrians moved with fluid grace, their energy weapons tracking smoothly as they searched for targets. They never saw the mines that Rodriguez had positioned along their approach route. The explosion sent 3 aliens flying backward, their personal shields overloaded by the crude chemical explosive that delivered more kinetic force than their defensive systems were designed to handle. The survivors tried to retreat, only to discover that the Marines had collapsed the ceiling behind them. That's what happens when you rely too much on energy shields, Rodriguez muttered, adjusting the detonation sequence for the next set of charges. Master Sergeant O'Brien monitored the battle from the building's central command position, watching his Marines systematically dismantle an alien assault force that should have been able to overwhelm them easily. The Zephyrians had better weapons, better armor, and better individual protection systems, but they had no experience fighting an enemy that treated every rule of warfare as a suggestion to be ignored. Second squad, they're trying to flank through the east wing, he reported over the tactical network. Williams, you have charges set on the support pillars? Affirmative, Sarge, just say when. Wait for them to commit. Let them get inside, then bring the whole section down on them. The aliens advanced with textbook precision, their formations perfect and their movements coordinated. They were magnificent soldiers following tactical doctrine that had won wars. Across the galaxy for centuries, they had never fought Marines who considered collapsing a building on top of themselves an acceptable tactical option if it took out enough enemies. The explosion that brought down the east wing could be heard across the city. When the dust cleared, 12 Zephyrian soldiers were buried under tons of crystalline debris, and the survivors were beginning to understand that they were not facing an enemy that fought by any recognizable rules. In orbit above the planet, Captain Mitchell received status reports from her Marine ground forces while simultaneously monitoring the space battle developing around Earth. The Valkyrie was too far away to participate directly, but her ship's sensor arrays could track the engagement in real time. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Torres reported, the civilian fleet around Earth is moving into attack formation. I'm reading over 400 vessels now. Mitchell watched the tactical display with fascination. The human ships were not moving in any formation that military textbooks would recognize. Instead, they were spreading out in a three-dimensional cloud that would maximize the effectiveness of kinetic weapons while minimizing the aliens' ability to target them efficiently. The Zephyrians are maintaining their formation, Torres continued. Standard fleet engagement pattern. They're treating this like a conventional space battle. They still don't understand, Mitchell realized. They're fighting the war they planned for, not the war they're actually in. The lead elements of the human fleet began their attack run 40 minutes before the aliens reached optimal bombardment position. Mining ships launched containers of uranium ore at velocities that turned them into relativistic projectiles. Cargo haulers fired improvised missile salvos using their cargo handling systems as launch platforms. The Zephyrian fleet responded with coordinated plasma volleys that should have devastated the attacking human ships. Their energy weapons were precise, powerful, and devastatingly effective against any conventional target. But the humans weren't fighting conventionally. Ships damaged beyond repair continued their attack runs, turning themselves into guided missiles. Crews abandoned vessels that were about to explode, but not before programming the ship's autopilots to ram enemy positions. Fleet Commander Jeltara watched her tactical displays with growing alarm as human vessels absorbed damage that should have destroyed them, then continued attacking with weapons that shouldn't have existed. A cargo hauler missing half its hull fired a salvo of uranium-filled cargo containers that punched through her escort's shields like they weren't there. How are they still fighting? Her tactical officer asked in bewilderment. Jeltara was beginning to understand the fundamental error in Zephyrian planning. They had studied human military doctrine and technology, but they had never understood human psychology. When faced with extinction, humans didn't surrender. They innovated, adapted, and fought with a creativity that bordered on insanity. The battle for Earth was becoming something no Zephyrian tactical computer had ever modeled. A war between technological superiority and desperate innovation. And the humans were winning. The end came faster than anyone expected. Fleet Commander Jeltara's flagship Eternal Glory was leading the Zephyrian retreat when the human cargo vessel Iron Mountain completed its final run. Captain Elena Vasquez had programmed her ship's autopilot, evacuated her crew to escape pods, and turned her massive hauler into a guided missile, carrying 3,000 tons of uranium ore. The Iron Mountain struck the Eternal Glory at 14% of light speed. The collision vaporized both vessels instantly, but the expanding cloud of superheated plasma and radiation took 12 more Zephyrian ships with it. In less than 6 hours, the mighty invasion fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. Admiral Zheng watched the retreat from his command center on Luna, still hardly believing what his sensors were telling him. The most technologically advanced military force in known galactic history had been defeated by converted cargo ships and improvised weapons. "Admiral," Commander Torres reported, his voice filled with awe, "the remaining Zephyrian vessels are jumping to hyperspace. They're leaving the system." Zheng nodded slowly, then activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "All vessels, this is Admiral Zheng. The invasion force has been repelled. Earth is secure." The cheering that erupted from 400 ships could be heard across every communication frequency in the system. On Kepler 442b, Master Sergeant O'Brien received the news as his Marines finished securing the alien city. The Zephyrian ground forces had surrendered after their orbital support disappeared, leaving behind a treasure trove of advanced technology and strategic intelligence. "Rodriguez," O'Brien called out as they surveyed the conference center where everything had begun. "You realize what you started when you shot that alien general?" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez looked at the scorch marks on the walls, the debris from the battle, and the alien bodies that had been cleared away hours ago. "I defended a diplomatic mission, Master Sergeant. Just like my orders said. You started an interstellar war." Rodriguez shrugged. He slapped a United States Marine. What did he expect to happen? O'Brien laughed, the sound echoing through the crystalline chamber. "Fair point. Think the aliens learned their lesson?" "I think they learned something about humans they hadn't expected," Rodriguez replied, checking his rifle one final time before securing it. "Question is whether they'll remember it." 3 months later, Ambassador Chen sat across from General Vexitar's replacement in a conference room on neutral territory. The new Zephyrian representative was younger, more cautious, and considerably more respectful of human military capabilities. "The Zephyrian Empire wishes to formally apologize for the misunderstanding that led to recent hostilities," the alien diplomat said carefully. "We had incorrect information about human intentions and capabilities." Chen, still bearing faint scars from the battle on Kepler 442b, kept his expression neutral. "What kind of trade arrangements did you have in mind?" "Complete technology transfer in exchange for permanent peace treaties," came the immediate reply. "Our shield technology, our faster-than-light communications, our medical advances, all of it, freely shared." "That's quite generous." The Zephyrian's 4 arms moved in what Chen had learned was a gesture of extreme sincerity. "We have studied the recordings of the battle around Earth. Your species turned cargo ships into weapons of mass destruction. You converted mining equipment into artillery. You fought with a creativity that our tactical computers cannot model." The alien paused, choosing his words carefully. "We believe that a peaceful relationship with humanity is Preferable to the alternative, Chen smiled. I'll convey your offer to my superiors. I think they'll find it acceptable. Later, in the secure communication booth, Chen contacted Admiral Zheng with a full report of the negotiations. They're scared, sir. Really scared. The invasion was supposed to be a quick demonstration of superior technology. Instead, it became a lesson in human adaptability. Are their peace offers genuine? I think so. They've run the numbers on a prolonged conflict with humanity, and the results terrify them. We don't fight by the rules they understand, Zheng nodded. The Joint Chiefs want to know if they're planning another attack. No, sir. From what I can determine, the Zephyrian Empire is more interested in making sure we never have a reason to attack them. They've shared intelligence about other species in the galaxy, offered to sponsor our membership in something called the Galactic Council, and suggested joint defense agreements. Defense agreements? Apparently, there are species out there that make the Zephyrians look peaceful. They want human military advisors to help develop new tactical doctrines for asymmetric warfare. Admiral Zheng laughed. So we've gone from facing invasion to being recruited as military consultants? That seems to be the case, sir. The galaxy apparently has a shortage of species capable of creative violence. Back on Earth, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had been promoted to Gunnery Sergeant and assigned to the newly created Interstellar Warfare School. His first lecture to a class of Marine officers from across the solar system was simple and direct. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 months ago an alien general slapped me across the face during a diplomatic meeting. He did it because his species had convinced themselves that humans were too primitive to be a real threat. Rodriguez gestured to a holographic display showing the wreckage of the Zephyrian invasion fleet. That alien general made a critical error in judgment. He confused technological advancement with tactical superiority. A young lieutenant raised her hand. Sir, what's the difference? Technology tells you what's possible. Tactics tell you what's effective. The aliens had better technology, but they fought the war they had planned for instead of the war they were actually fighting. Rodriguez's smile was predatory. When someone threatens humanity, we don't play by their rules. We make them play by ours. The lecture hall was silent as the implications sank in. The Zephyrian Empire studied us for 50 years and still didn't understand the most important thing about human military doctrine, Rodriguez continued. We're not trying to fight fair. We're trying to win. He paused, looking at the faces of the officers who would carry human tactical knowledge to the stars. That alien general wanted to demonstrate Zephyrian superiority. Instead, he demonstrated why you never ever start a fight with a species that spent millions of years learning how to survive on a planet where everything was trying to kill them. The class erupted in applause, and Rodriguez knew that the lesson had been understood. When humanity finally took its place among the stars, it would be on human terms. The galaxy was about to discover that the most dangerous species wasn't always the most advanced one. Sometimes it was the one that refused to give up.